to order January 7th, 2020, regarding the Mike Miller Park and Michael Scott Cronkite. Is he here? Is that you, sir? Okay. Want to read the public hearing? No?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, Mr. Concrete, you ready to proceed? No, it's not. It's an informal hearing. So. Formal hearing. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Brittany, if you'll come up here.
Oh, where? Sit with you over here?
Brittany, just for the record, what's your employment and where do you work?
I'm the director of the Marshall County Parks Department, and my office is based at Mike Miller Park.
Okay. And when did, Mr. Concrete, can you hear me okay? Okay. When did you start having issues with Mr. Concrete and his activities at the park?
It started not long after I had been there. I hired him back in January. The issues with him started early spring of this past year, of 2019.
Okay. And what kind of issues were those?
Initially, the issues started as issues with the lights being turned on our soccer fields and baseball fields. And it became an issue because when our park staff would see that field lights were on and they saw no one playing on the fields, they would go over to turn the lights off, assuming that somebody had been playing and had left them on. And that was when the first issues began, because Mr. Concrete would come off of the trails and would be very upset, saying that he had turned the lights on so that he could see to run the walking trails at night. And that was kind of when it all started.
Okay. Now, what's the reason for the lights to be off of the walking trails at night?
So we ended up, because of this issue, we designated our walking trails as day use only, because they weren't properly lit for them to be in use at night and be safe for people to use them. So there was no way to adequately light those paths from using our field lights. So even doing that, it still wasn't safe for people to be out utilizing those trails at night, even with the small bit of light that would have come from the baseball or soccer field lights. So at that point, that's when we decided to designate the trails for day use only, because it still, as I said, wasn't an adequate amount of light to light the trails.
Okay, so public safety issue.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And how many different instances did you or your staff have with Mr. Concrete over the lights in this walking trail?
It was multiple issues. My staff became very uncomfortable working at night because Mr. Concrete would be very aggressive, I guess, when being approached by this. He would wear a headlamp and he would turn the headlamp on and shine it in their faces. He would hold his cell phone out and yell at them that he was filming and recording everything. He was almost combative in being approached. So my park staff became very uncomfortable even working at night because of having to approach him during this.
Okay. And again, about how many times was he told not to do?
Multiple. I'm going to say probably at least 5 or 6 different instances at least.
Okay. And he kept doing the same thing
Yes,
over and
that
over
is
again?
correct.
Did he say that he was not going to comply with the request?
He said that he was a taxpayer, that he was entitled to the use of the fields. If he needed to reserve the fields just as a team would, that he would do that, but that he was entitled to the use of the lights. We tried offering other areas for him to walk in, as most other people do when they come to the park if they want to walk at night, where it is adequately lit. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to utilize the trails still. So that's when signage was put up. That's when we had to put locks on all of our lights so that they could only be controlled by park staff. And those were the steps that we had to take to prevent it from continuing to happen.
And how much money had to be spent on locks for the lights, do you know?
I do not have that amount. I could pull it.
Approximate?
I would say over $200 were spent on lights or locks for the lights everything to be secured.
Okay. So that took care of the lights issue. What about the next problem that arose?
We had a couple months of a break where nothing else happened, and then in the summertime, we started noticing, not many people know, but as you are back towards the back of our lake. There is a waterfall type feature that is back there. The reason that is there is if water levels get low or down on that end of the lake, on the opposite end of the lake, the runoff from the splash pad happens there, which keeps the water churning and moving so it doesn't get the algae growing as much, keeps the water fresh. On the opposite end of the lake, we don't have that, so this waterfall type feature was built there. It's only turned on, like I said, if water levels get low or if we need to turn the water and move it a little bit. We noticed that that waterfall feature started to be turned on randomly and was being left on all day. It's not something that my guys typically have to check on a daily basis because we don't only our staff turns it on or operates it. It was finally determined that Mr. Conkrat was the one turning on that light, and when he was approached about that, he was entitled to be able to enjoy the aesthetics of the waterfall during his run. So we then had to take the same precautions on the waterfall, and we had to purchase locks to put on the waterfall access panel as well, so that only park staff would be able to operate that.
And was this multiple instances of him being told not to turn it on?
I believe we
before you
only
took the lock?
confronted him about that one time. They were only able to confront him one time on that specific one. And based on our past experience with the lights, we knew we were just wasting our time, so we just had to go ahead and lock that one up as well.
So no real reason for him to have the waterfall turned on?
No, none whatsoever. And, I mean, as long as that has been there, no one else has ever messed with it. It's never been an issue before.
And about how many times was it turned on without authorization?
I would say probably 4 or 5 different times.
And that causes, is it circulated water or is it new water?
It's new water.
So water bill would be increased. and
Correct.
Electricity to run it would be increased as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, moving on then to the water spigots.
So the most recent issue that we had was the water spigots throughout the park were being turned on, which is fine. They're there to be used, but the issue was they were being turned on and left on, and with nobody around. There wasn't anybody that could be seen around the water spigots, but our staff would see them on and running. And this escalated into a couple of them being turned on after the park was actually closed at night, and us coming into the park the next morning to have the entrance flooded because spigots had been left running all night long after my staff would leave. We finally were able to determine that it was Mr. Conkrat again turning on the water spigots and leaving them. I believe several different explanations were given. It was all a very entitled approach to, I'm a taxpayer and I should be able to utilize the water spigots in the park. That type of an explanation was given. And we were at the point of trying to figure out a way to put locks on these as well when we contacted the sheriff's office at that point to see if there was anything else that we could do.
And was there a specific incident involving Miss Jessica Treese and Mr. Conkrat?
Yes, she did catch him one night actually turning the spigot on. She went to turn it off, then it would be turned back on again. She tried to approach him. He ran off into the woods down one of the walking trails. He would continue to use the walking trails at night, and he would wear a headlamp that would flash. So we can see him on our videos, our surveillance cameras at night. You can see the flashing light where he would dodge. That specific night, they ended up having to stay past when the park was supposed to close. We had 2 employees that had to work later trying to get him out of the park. And this was after the park had already closed, and they were trying to round him up, trying to catch him to get him out of the park.
And he had refused to leave upon request?
Yes.
Did Miss Treese ask him to leave? Is that who asked him?
I believe so, yes.
All right. How long did it take them to catch him before, or were they able to catch him?
They were finally able to kind of usher him out to the front in the truck. You can see him leave the park finally. I believe it was maybe 15, 20 minutes after the park was scheduled to have closed already, and then they were able to finally lock up the park and leave after that.
So this caused inconvenience to the employees and having them to stay after to deal with this?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Okay. What about his overall just interaction with park employees?
Very confrontational. When they would try to approach him or try to talk to him or tell him anything, everything was very confrontational. Everything was the cell phone in the face, shining the light in their eyes when it was night so that they couldn't see. It made them extremely uncomfortable, and they felt very threatened by his demeanor when being approached.
Make them uncomfortable?
Yes, very much so.
All right, Mr. Concrete, you have any questions for Ms. Heath? Need you to come up to the microphone.
Yes, sir. Brittany, you made a statement that said you've been an employee at the park for how long again? I missed that. The door
For a
was
year.
open. For 1 year. So when was the approximate start time?
It was last January of 2019.
Last January 2019. So when you first became employed at the park, what were the rules of the baseball field lights?
They were the same as they are now, I would assume. None of the rules have changed as far as ball field lights go, except that we now have to have them locked.
So were these rules posted when you came to work anywhere on the park grounds? for
I'm
the
sorry, what
public?
rules are you referring to? I thought we
The-
had just clarified that there weren't necessarily any rules at the time.
The baseball and the soccer field lights, was there a public post that said who could use the lights and who could not use the lights?
No, sir, because as I just clarified, there was no need for a rule until it became an issue with our encounter.
And these same rules apply for the basketball and the tennis courts, I'm assuming.
They do not.
Okay, are there new rules for the basketball and tennis court than the baseball and the soccer fields?
I'm sorry?
Are there other rules for the basketball court and tennis courts that don't apply to the soccer and baseball field?
We haven't had to lock those lights currently. Hopefully, it won't become an issue where we have to.
So people come and play basketball and tennis without having to interrupt and contact the parks department?
Yes, that's correct.
So they just turn the lights on?
Yes, as you just said, yes.
Yes, so before April the 8th, you implied that the lights have new rules and they have been locked up since April the 8th, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But the basketball court and the tennis courts were not locked up.
That is also
But they
correct.
are also for public personnel to use?
Yes.
So if the soccer field and baseball field lights are not for public use, why are they being locked?
Yeah.
I think the difference is the soccer fields and baseball fields are determined to be for team play and have reservations that need to be done at those fields. The basketball and tennis courts, I believe you can reserve.
We've never done a
Yeah,
reservation.
so we've never reserved any of those courts, so there was no need for any kind of policy on those.
So what's
So
the-
you're comparing the basketball and tennis courts to the soccer and baseball when they're two totally different things.
But it's also the park resource, the lights, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So is it the park's employees' job to turn the lights on and off at the soccer and baseball fields?
Yes.
Is it the park's employees' responsibility to turn the lights off at the basketball court and tennis courts?
Yes.
So these rules changed April the 8th. They put locks on the switches that turn the soccer field and baseball field lights on. Is this correct?
Yes.
So how many years has this park been open?
'01? 17, 18 years?
17, 18 years, and this is the first year the lights that have been locked up on the soccer and baseball fields?
Yes, sir. This is the first year that we've had this issue and
And
been
this-
forced to use locks.
These lights were put there for public use.
Yes.
Am
And they're
I-
still for public use.
Am I a public personnel?
Yes.
Okay. So after April the 8th, the park changed the rules. We have to call and request the lights turned on at the park. Is this correct?
Yes, sir.
So what's the routine when somebody calls to request lights on? How does this go about?
Someone calls the maintenance line to request that the fields or the field lights be turned on. Someone from the maintenance staff goes down, unlocks the lights, and turns them on, and then locks the lights again. Whenever they are done with use, they go back and turn the field lights off and lock the box again.
Okay. So on the night of April the 5th, I do believe, I've got some evidence I'd like to represent.
Okay.
Well, I have some evidence here that states that on April the 8th, that you wrote an email to the defendant, which is me, that states that there is no minimum needed for anyone on these fields. And you also stated that if I choose to run or walk, the soccer field can be used without reservations, or as long as no one else is reserving them, I think is how it's worded here.
Yes,
Is that
they've seen
correct?
those emails as well.
Okay, so on this email, you clearly stated to me that I'm allowed to use the field as a public use field, correct? Unless it's being reserved.
Yes.
So
Yes, you weren't being restricted from using the fields. You had that same opportunity just as every other citizen does.
so on my statement, I'm being charged with continuing tampering with the lights. So why would I be continuing tampering with the lights if I have written permission that says I was allowed to use these lights? Excuse me, come again? I have written permission from Brittany Heath from the Parks Department on Friday, April the 5th, that says that I am allowed to use the lights at the soccer fields. It says that I have permission as long as they're not already reserved.
As she just said, it was for the trails.
My
You were running on the
question
trails.
is,
You were running on the trails.
my question is, she gave me permission to use,
Fields.
my question is, she gave me,
Answered that for you.
my question is, she gave me permission to use the soccer field.
That's been answered. So,
But I'm being charged for tampering with lights.
move on.
I'm being charged with tampering with lights. So, next Saturday, and this would have been on April the 6th, 2019, at 7:48, you stated in another email that says to run the roads. You also stated the soccer and baseball fields are specialized maintenance and are kept in best shape possible. Then continue advising me to run the roads. Is this something that you would tell a soccer player to do?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Would you advise a soccer player to practice soccer on the roads of the park?
Not when we have perfectly good soccer fields for them to utilize.
Okay. Would you make advice for a baseball player to do the same?
Again, not when we have baseball fields for them to utilize.
So, you have made a statement stating that you'd advise me to run the roads. Is there a reason why that I can't run the fields?
I'm confused as to why we're even talking.
This has to do with the trails.
I don't think we're
This
deb-
allegation is way more than just the trails. This is across in what's going on here.
Okay, what was the specific question again?
So, is there a reason why that I cannot run the fields, the soccer field and baseball fields?
I think we told you, and if you'll look at all of the emails, I think there is a later email that says, go ahead and use the fields as you need, is there not? Or if we're going to talk about the emails, let's talk about all of them inclusively.
No, it said clearly use the soccer field.
Yes,
It-
I understand that,
it
but what I'm saying is in a
excluded
later
baseball.
email, you can't just pull out little bits and pieces. If we're going to talk about a conversation, let's talk about the whole conversation, which I'm perfectly fine with. But I do believe that in a later email, As said, there is no minimum. If that is your only option is to use one of those, then you're free to do so. So if we're going to talk about a statement, let's talk about the final ending statement that was made in the chain of emails. And then I'm happy to debate that with you.
All right, so have you made any attempts to repair the pathways?
I'm sorry, how does that?
On my allegations here, it says that I'm being charged with turning the lights on and stuff, and you also stated that the defendant is on trails and using these trails without permission because they're blocked off for nighttime use due to lack of lighting.
For your safety.
Yeah, so are these trails disrepaired to the point they should be shut down?
We have not received that opinion from anyone, no.
But they're in disrepair to the point we can't have them used at night?
No, sir, they're not in disrepair to the point they can't be used at night. They are not properly lit at night, therefore not making them safe to be utilized. There's a large difference in disrepair and not being adequately lit.
So I heard earlier discussion about a headlight that I use to run and to walk the trails. So in general, there's a discussion about the reasoning we shut the trails down for night use was because they wasn't lit. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So if the defendant has a light, wouldn't the trail be lit?
We, but I think even if we're going to talk about that, I think it just further goes to prove the fact that you continue to disregard park rules after it was posted, that the trails were closed after dark when you knowingly ran right past those signs using your headlight. So once again, this just further proves the fact that you ignore any authority at the park and just do as you please anyway.
How many signs are posted at this park about the trail, that being closed at night?
I'm sure you're probably going to tell me for sure.
I'll respond to my question again. How many signs are posted at this park?
I believe
that
there are at
says-
least 3.
There's at least 3. Can you tell me the location of them?
No, I can't off the top of my head.
And how long have you worked at this park again?
1 year.
1 year, okay. So you said it cost $200 to buy locks,
I said approximately.
approximately $200 to buy locks for these lights. There's a lock missing from the baseball field. It's been missing since midsummer. Is there a reason for this?
When was the last time that was checked? When was the last
I
time?
seen it was early summer when I
Okay.
noticed it was left unlocked. If we have rules to establish the park lights to be locked, shouldn't it also be locked?
I'm unsure as how you can verify that it's still missing since you haven't been allowed on park property now for several weeks.
I've not witnessed the lock on it or not since I've been last allowed at the park. But the last time I was at the park, the light was not locked, and it was not locked all the way through at least June, if not prior to that. Is there a reason why this light is not locked?
No, we do have to routinely do maintenance to many aspects of the park. Not everything can be fixed immediately, but we do our best to get those issues fixed as quickly as we can.
So you stated there was a problem with the use of water faucets at the park. Do you know how many water faucets are located at this park?
No, I have no clue.
Do you know what kind of water faucets these are? Are these the normal frost-free, frost-proof faucets that we see throughout the county?
No, I don't know.
You don't know. Are the faucets locked?
No, not yet.
Are the faucets for public use?
Yes, they are.
So why would we lock the faucets if they're for public use?
Because when that use is abused, then we have to take steps to prevent the abuse, as we have had to do with the lights and the waterfall.
Are there any signs that say not to use them?
No, because it's perfectly fine for people visiting the park to use them. So
And
there would be no
placed-
need for a sign.
and they're placed throughout the park for the public to use.
Absolutely.
According to a statement, park staff witnessed the defendant turn on the water. Is this correct?
Yes.
What is this person's name?
I believe it was Jessica Treese that saw you
Is
turn on
she
the water.
here today?
No.
Jessica Treese has made a statement positive identifying the defendant at Chaparral Pavilion. Is this correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us how many feet away from the faucet to the parking lot where she was parked at? Let me rephrase
No,
that.
I don't know.
That you seem to be confused. So Jessica Treese made a positive identification of the defendant saying he was at this faucet. Can you tell me how many feet
No, sir, I cannot.
from her parking spot in the parking lot to the faucet she would be at? Do
No,
you
sir,
have
I
an
cannot.
approximate feet on this?
No, sir, I do not.
So you're not aware how many feet this is?
No.
Jessica Treese claimed to be at the time of the witness, the person at the water faucet. What time of day was this that she was at this water faucet?
It was at night.
So it was dark.
Yes.
Did Jessica Treese say why someone was at the water faucet?
Why, I don't understand the question again, I'm
Well,
sorry.
But before Jessica Treese was making this statement, did she contact you and say somebody was at the water faucet?
I feel like if you have questions about Ms. Teresa's statement, then we can address those specifically, but I don't have any further knowledge outside of what her statement entails. So I'm not really sure what you're looking for as far as
Okay.
anything from me
Well,
here.
let's continue on. Where was Jessica Treese before she witnessed, claims to be me at this water faucet? Do you have any idea where she was prior?
She would have been patrolling the park at some point.
So the park employees patrol the park.
Yes, they do. They go around and make checks and clean bathrooms and go around to make sure everything is okay
Does-
within the park.
Does that include checking the water faucets and making sure the lights are turned off?
Yes.
So that's something they routinely did, is checked faucets throughout the park to make sure everything was turned off as it should?
No, it was not anything that we ever had to specifically check for until it became an issue once again.
Jessica Treese stated that the person she was turning the headlights on, headlight off and ran away. She said, I turned my headlight off and ran away. Is this correct?
Yes.
Are there any rules at the park that states a person must use a headlight at all times after dark?
No.
According to the arresting warrant, Jessica Treese also said she witnessed the defendant turning the water off. Is this correct?
If that's what it says in the warrant.
So you're telling me Jessica Treese witnessed me turning the water on and turning the water off? Is this
Again,
correct?
this is third-hand knowledge. I'm not the one who made the statement. It was an employee of mine. So questioning
These are
me
just
based on my
questions.
employee's statement.
I understand.
Okay, so my answers are doing you no good here, sir.
So, in your opinion, did Jessica Treese make a positive identity to me at the water faucet that night?
She can't answer that.
In the restaurant stated that 11/10/2019, an employee, Jason Himmersolo, had observed the defendant running the trails at approximately 6 p.m. Is this correct?
That's what the statement says.
It is. Jason also stated the water faucets were off at this time. Do you agree with him?
If that's what the statement says. I'm not going to be
So-
able to
So
add anything to these statements.
questions, well, you are the park boss,
Do
correct?
you have any questions that she has personal knowledge of?
Yes, sir, I do.
Ask those and eliminate the others.
So, is it part of Jason's responsibility as a park staff to be sure the faucets and the lights are turned off at each night before
Yes.
leaving? Has Jason ever reported anybody running the trails after dark?
Oh my, I don't know what.
Well, you are the
I
boss
don't
at the
know.
park, correct?
Yes, sir, I am.
And Jason is an employee of the park, correct?
Yes, sir, he is.
So has Jason ever reported to you about people running the trails after dark? It's a yes or no question.
You're the only person that we have had an issue with running the trails after dark, sir.
So you're saying I'm the only person that runs a trail after dark?
No, sir, that's not what I said. I said you were the only person we've had an issue with running the trails after dark.
So according to the arresting warrant, there says there are visual surveillance of me running towards the main entrance at approximately 7:33. Is this correct?
That, again, if that's what the warrant states,
Yeah, you made the statement. It's in the warrant, yes.
then yes.
Okay. What time does the park close?
Depends on what month of the year you're talking
Well,
about.
what time in the spring does the park close?
In the spring, we're open until 11. Right now, we're open until 10.
So, are there any cameras near the park entrance?
Yes, sir?
Are there any other surveillance cameras showing the defendant after the accolations of 7:33 at the park on that night?
We have you on a couple of different cameras, yes, sir.
All right. Do you have any surveillance of me at the water faucets?
I can't remember what all we were able to find. That would probably be a question for the officers.
Do you have any pictures of me?
Again,
At the
that would be a
water faucet.
question for one of the officers. All of that was turned over.
Have you personally witnessed me turn the water on or off at the faucets?
No, I have not personally.
Let's move to the water faucet, or the waterfall, I think is what you call it. You made a statement that the reports that the waterfall is only to fill the pond to avoid stagnant pond. Is this correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And also when the water's low in the pond, is this correct?
Also correct.
You also stated the waterfall is not continuous running. It's not for continuous running. Is this correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Can you answer why it is not meant to be run continuously?
It just, that's not the purpose that it was put there for.
So if a basketball player goes to the basketball park, turns the lights on, are they for continuous use?
No.
So they have to be turned off.
Yes.
What time do they get turned off?
Well, if there's no one out there, I mean, if there's people out there playing, at the very latest, it's going to be turned off when the park closes.
So you made a statement that says that this waterfall had no intentions except for filling the pond. We didn't establish this. You also established it's not for continuous running. Can you tell me why it's not for continuous use?
She just did, so move on to another question.
Can you tell me the location and on-off switch for this waterfall?
Yeah, there's a big, like, electrical panel box just over from that waterfall, and that's where it's located.
Was it locked when you became employed at this park?
No, again, this just goes to the fact that we had to lock that up, just like we did our lights, after we began having an issue with you turning it on.
Do you know the approximate date of being locked?
I do not off the top of my head, no.
Can you describe, if this is a waterfall at a public park, can you describe why it wasn't locked prior to this incident?
Because, again, in however many years the park has been operating or that waterfall has been there, no one else has ever had an issue with it or became an issue using it. Most people would stay away from the big electrical boxes and things that we have in the park. It's never been tampered with or been used.
So you're saying no one else has ever turned the waterfall on or off during all the
Not that
times?
we have ever seen or
that you're
had an
not
issue with.
Are there any signs around this waterfall that says not for public use?
No, sir. After the issues that we had with you and the ball field lights, we just decided to skip that step completely and go straight to the lock to prevent any further confrontations or any further issues.
Is there a phone number that could be called to turn these on?
No, because again, they're only to be utilized by park staff to keep the water from being stagnant or to raise water levels.
So you make that statement. Do you have any proof of prior to this date that there's a statement that holds any grounds for that?
I'm not sure that it's
You're-
even relevant.
You're stating that you have these rules that waterfall can't be used by the public, but yet ever since the the waterfall's been put in, it's been open to use for public. It's not been locked.
She's asked, and that's been answered.
And you never witnessed anyone else turn these waterfall on or off?
Not other than park staff, no, sir.
Did you ever see the defendant turn the waterfall on or off?
No, sir, I did not personally see you do it.
Is there any video surveillance of the defendant turning the waterfall on or off?
We do not currently have surveillance on that particular feature.
So if the waterfall wasn't for public use, it was filling the pond to start with, why wasn't it locked?
We've already answered this. Do you have another question I can answer for you?
I sure do. So you were unsure about the water faucets, about if they were frost-free or not.
That's irrelevant. I mean, ask something that's relevant.
It's not irrelevant.
Next question.
I don't think I have any more questions for Brittany at this time.
Matt, you want to come on up? Okay, Detective Hilbrecht, just go ahead and state your name for the record.
My name is Matt Hilbrick.
And you're employed with the Marshall County Sheriff's Office?
That is correct.
And did you and Deputy Reynolds, or Captain?
Chief.
Chief Deputy Reynolds, did you take part in the investigation on this criminal matter?
Yes, I did.
And as part of that, did you interview Mr. Concrete?
Yes, I did.
And just generally speaking, did he admit to the allegations that are in your complaint and to the, what Brittany has just stated to the court?
Yes, yes, he did.
So admitted to that he was turning the lights on,
Yes,
admitted that he was turning the water fountain on,
yes,
admitted that he was turning the water faucets on,
yes.
admitted that he was not turning them off.
Correct.
And what did he say about not turning them off?
Long and short, with the spigots, he says that he likes the water there, but it has a chlorine taste, so he likes to turn the spigot on, continue his run, let the chlorine flavor clear from the pipes before he gets a drink of water from it. He doesn't recall if he's turned it off or not when he leaves.
And according to Mr. Concrete, whose duty is it to turn it off if he turns it on?
It would be the employee's duty.
Okay. And toward the end of the interview, did you ask Mr. Concrete if he would agree to stop turning the water on and leaving it running?
I did. That was my primary goal for going.
Okay. And what was his response?
He would not agree to that.
So he was going to continue to turn, and you took that as his statement that he was going to continue to turn it on and just leave it on?
He was argumentative, much like you've seen, just that it was, I should investigate the ball players who leave the lights on and everyone else, and if they can do this, I can do that, and that he was, taxpayer and entitled to it.
So no cooperation whatsoever, or no willingness to stop leaving the water on?
Gave no indication that he would be willing to stop.
Okay.
Any questions?
I do.
Contract, the building will be closing at 4:30, so I don't know what you're planning on telling the court, but you need to be mindful of that.
Matt, correct?
Yes, sir.
Detective
Are you a
Hilbrick.
Marshall County Sheriff's Department employee?
Correct.
How long have you worked for Marshall County Sheriff's Department?
A little over 20 years.
Um, So on this investigation, it has some discussion about the lights being on, has discussion about the lights being turned on and off. Have you ever seen a defendant turn the lights on or off?
No, sir.
Do you have any video surveillance of him turning the lights on or off?
No, sir.
Same question goes for any of the waterfalls. Is do you have any surveillance of the defendant turning lights on, surveillance or pictures of him turning water on or off?
No, the surveillance cameras are all located in areas that don't cover the spigots or the lights that are in question. What they do is confirm our statements from the employees that say he was, on a particular date and time in the park. You can clearly see him running. You can see his headlamp bouncing as he's going through the park. He's easy to identify because of the headlamp and also the traffic vest.
So, Tim Reynolds has made a statement stating that he had witnessed me turning the water on at the main entrance of the park. Did he discuss this with you?
Sure did.
He also made a statement that he thought I was a park employee. Did he discuss this with you?
Sure did.
So, and then later he made a fact that said that indeed the person he's seen at the front of the park entrance was me. Is this true?
He's sitting right there.
Correct.
Don't ask him.
Ask him.
I've got questions for him when he comes up.
He's not coming up, so if you want to ask him, you better do it now.
Tim Reynolds. I thought we were investigating Matt at this point.
Informal.
So Matt, I don't see much of your information on this statement here, the arresting warrant. Is this correct?
It's all of my information.
So did you spend any time at this park investigating this?
Sure.
But you did not catch me anywhere on a surveillance camera or a picture?
Oh, no, you were on surveillance plenty of times.
But did you catch me in the act of breaking these laws? that
Already
I've been-
answered that.
Oh, no,
Move on.
Okay, okay, so there's nothing there. All right. Mr. Reynolds, how long have you worked for the Marshall County Sheriff's Department?
I've been employed here since August of '03.
So how long have you been a police officer?
Since January of 1998.
You stated on Sunday, 11/10/19, approximately 7:30, you had gone to Mike Miller Park and observed a male subject with facial hair wearing a reflective vest turning the water faucet on at the park entrance. Is this correct?
Yes, yes it is. I was taking my kids to the park that night, actually. Didn't know anything about an issue at the park. I was taking my kids to the park for a church function that evening. And as I pulled in the front, I saw a subject with a traffic vest, a headlamp type on, standing by the front spigot. The spigot was open full, and he was standing a couple feet away from it, just standing there watching it. At the time, like I said, I didn't know any issue had been going on at the park. I thought an employee might have been doing something with it. I had no idea. Whenever I came back through, an hour or so later, he wasn't standing there at the spigot anymore. On my part, I didn't notice whether or not the spigot was still running at that point, but I did notice somebody standing there whenever I left.
So you were coming into the park when you witnessed
Yes, that's correct.
the person standing at the water faucet. So how many feet approximately is that to the water faucet to your seat in the vehicle?
Say from where I'm at to the spigot, probably maybe from here to that wall, something like that. Roughly, approximately.
75 foot, you'd call it? 50 foot?
Approximately here from the wall. I don't know if it's
All right.
exact foot or whatever, so.
That's very fair. All right. So when you left the park an hour later, so let me back this up. So when you came into the park, you said you witnessed someone standing at the water faucet, had the water on running. An hour later, when you left the park, did you see the water faucet on or off?
I think I just answered that. I didn't notice if the water was running or not. I didn't notice the person standing there anymore, but I didn't notice whether or not the faucet was running.
So I've
Person
assumed-
standing there with a light and a vest is what caught my eye pulling in. And then, so I kind of focused in that general area as I was pulling in because of like that, and I did notice the water was on. On the way out, I didn't notice anybody standing there, so I wasn't really focusing. Again, I didn't know had been any kind of issue at the park, so I didn't notice the faucet, whether or not water is running or not.
So it was a on or off question. Did you witness the water on or off when you left the park?
answered that. Move on.
Have you ever seen a park employee wear a reflective vest?
Actually, I've been to the park very few times at dark, so I don't know if they wear vests or not.
They don't.
Okay.
But it was dark. This was approximately 7:30 at night.
Yes, it was dark.
And you're saying you clearly seen the defendant from there to the wall at dark?
Yes. What I noticed, like I said, is the tire. The thing that stood out to me was the beard. It looked kind of patchy, or kind of the design. And then as far
Sound-
as physical features, once I saw him, once Matt talked to me about it, as far as the office, asking if I had a flash drive. He asked me if I had a flash drive because he was going to go out and try to get the video from the park, and stated what it was about. And we had this conversation, which is what brought me into it. I went out with him whenever he interviewed him. Upon first seeing him, it looked like the same person, the same features, the same beard, the same size-wise.
Did you see any signs around there that said for public use or not?
I don't know if there's a sign on the front talking about the spigot or not. I haven't seen one.
Did you see a lock on this faucet?
No, I didn't see a lock on the faucet. From my understanding, I think they still said the faucets aren't locked, so, but I didn't see if it was locked or not. Clearly, it was on.
So I would assume this faucet that we're discussing is for public use.
I think that's a question for the park, not for my part of the investigation.
Was the subject wearing glasses?
They had a headlight up here, so it was, I can't say if he had glasses on or not at that point.
So the subject was wearing a headlight on his head, correct?
Correct.
What color were the pants on the subject matter?
I don't remember for certain on the pants. I apologize.
And you stated that you seen a light on his head. Can you describe what color this light was?
It was a light. I'm sorry, I don't believe it was a green or red light. I mean, it just looked like a standard headlight that people wear.
Did you see a tail light? A red light?
From the position he was standing, I wouldn't have seen, I guess if he had one on his back, I don't know.
Have you ever seen the defendant in the park before?
I've never had any contact with him prior to this at all.
Did you witness the defendant turn the water faucet on?
If there's confusion on what I've testified to.
You made it clear that the
Cricket
water.
was on. Water was standing, was running out of it whenever I drove by.
You made it clear that the water was on when you came in.
Okay.
and you said the person you seen at this waterfalls, it was standing next to it with it on. That's the clear statement you made. So was the water on or off when you came in?
He's already answered that. Move on.
So your statement at the defendant's resident states that that he readily admitted turning the water faucet on. Is this correct?
Yes, we did.
Did the defendant explain why he turned the water faucet on?
He felt he was, liked the taste of fresh water, so he would turn it on and leave it running while he would run around the trails, come back to it, fill his water bottle.
So the defendant was at this water faucet getting water in his water bottle, is it what it sounds like?
As I testified, he was just standing there watching it at the time. He wasn't leaning over, he wasn't filling a water bottle, he was just standing there watching it whenever I observed him. I haven't seen video footage. I don't know if he ran that night. I don't know anything else. I just know what I saw that night is my part of it.
So your description of the person standing at the water faucet sounds very vague. You don't even know that the person was wearing glasses or whatnot. And
Is
so
that him
would-
that you
would-
saw? Is that him?
Would you say
Appears
that,
to be the same one. That's why I told.
Okay, let's
So we
just,
take the
let's
field
just
break
short
whenever
circuit
we-
it.
we
Is
talk
that
to
him that you saw?
so you're saying in
Okay.
the dark, you could see me all the way over to the wall and clearly see my face to clearly identify me, but yet you're saying I was standing in a position that you couldn't clearly see my face. Is this correct?
No, I said I didn't notice. You had a headlight here, so whether or not you had glasses on. What I'd noticed was the headlight, the vest, the size as far as his, and then the beard. And whenever I made contact with him, it looked like the exact same person. I
It-
stand here today and
it looked
tell you, I
like-
believe that you were the person that was standing there that night.
You believe, okay. I don't have any more questions for Tim at this time.
Okay, is there anything you want to tell the court? Before you do, Matt, will you read Miranda rights?
Obviously, you've got an ongoing criminal case, so, and law enforcement's in the room, so we're just going to advise you do have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court of law. You have the right to have your attorney present. If you can afford one, desire one, court will appoint one for you. Long and short, you don't have to talk in front of me.
I have some documents I would like to present the court for evidence.
Okay, you can bring those up.
The documents are discussing the frost-free faucets. These frost-free faucets can create contaminants if you don't run them and clear them out. I also have documents of the, of course, you already have these documents, but I'll give them to you anyway.
Same document?
No, sir, that's one set. I have more documents to come. Here's the second set of documents. I have more documents to come. So, on my documents, I have pictures of general public running after dark. This was after this investigation. I think this was said on the pictures on the 15th or 16th of November. The pictures represent the general public running that after dark. And as far as I'm aware, they were not integrated, they were not cited, and they were not harassed on this matter. I also have medical record showing where I spent 3 days in the hospital from a contaminant. It almost killed me. I think it's from the park water faucets that were not put in properly by the state with proper drainage. I also have facts that state that Brittany Heath intentionally locked the park lights up for me so I couldn't use them. I also have facts that state that she allowed me to use them. I have evidence clearly stating that Tim Reynolds made a statement that he assumed the male subject would park at the time with the reflection vest was not clear that it was me. He made a statement that said it was vague. He was looking the other way. He had a light on. So clearly he couldn't see that it was the defendant or not. I have a statement, I have evidence stating that Jessica Treese witnessed me turning the water faucet on. The same Jessica Treese also made a statement witnessing me turn the water faucets off. I have evidence stating that Brittany Heath had gave me the rights to use the water and to use the lights. I also have evidence that Brittany Heath made another statement to investigators stating that she intentionally locked the lights so the defendant could not use them as a public person. I have evidence from Brittany Heath stating the trails are considered closed after dark since they are not lit. I also have evidence of people using the trail system after dark after this investigation has been concluded, as you're seeing the pictures. I have evidence from Jessica Treese stating the defendant was using a headlight to run. I have evidence of a locked waterfall to keep the defendant from turning it on that had no prior publicly posted rules who could use it. I also have evidence showing the cause to run frost-proof faucets, which you'll see in your evidence. Consuming water from would need to be ran for a given time to clear out any contaminants that could be in these frost-proof faucets. I have evidence showing Brittany Heath changed the rules of the trail system in an attempt to stop the defendant from using the lights. She also made it clear why the lights are not safe in the park trail for the park trail system. I have evidence that the defendant made a statement to Brittany Heath that park personnel have been harassing him. I also have evidence from Brittany Heath stating the facility is for public use. I would like to move this case to a formal hearing.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. There's criminal litigation that is taking place, so I would recommend a brief executive session.
Need a motion to go into executive session. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll go ahead and call court back to order. We'll wait, I'll read this while we're waiting on Monty. On January 7th, 2020, the Morris County Fiscal Court heard evidence at a public hearing regarding acts of criminal mischief and misuse of park property at Mike Miller Park by Michael Scott Conkright. According to Brittany Hargrove, park manager, and Detective Matt Hilbrick, Morris County Sheriff's Office, Conkright began causing problems at the park last summer by going onto park property after dark and turning lights on to run the trails. This policy of no lights on the trails after dark was instituted to prevent injury from someone using the trails in poor light. When asked to stop, Conkright became angry, did not do so, and continued to engage in this behavior to the point where locks had to be installed on the light switches at the expense of the park. Later in 2019, park employees noticed that the pond water fountain was being turned on by someone other than an employee and without authorization. Later, during an interview with Detective Hilbrick, Conkright admitted that he had been the one turning on the pond water fountain without authorization. On November 4th, 2019, Conkright ignored park employee Jessica Treese' directive to leave the park because it was closing and kept running until past time of the park closing hour. Employees had to stay over past closing time approximately 15-20 minutes to chase Conkright out of the park. Approximately 1 week later, park employees began noticing that someone was turning on water spigots and leaving them on. Jason Hermosolo stated that Cronkite was the only one in the park at the time, leaving him as the only possible person to have turned the water on and leaving it running. Upon interview, Cronkite admitted to turning on the water spigots to get water and then not turning them off. Cronkite stated it was not his responsibility to turn the water off, but rather the responsibility of park employees. The water left running unnecessarily caused flooding issues and caused wasted water and money for the county utility bill. Cronkite's only real defense to his actions was a claim of discrimination due to the basketball players leaving lights on and electricity being more expensive than water. Conkright was specifically asked by Detective Hilbrick if he would agree to stop turning on the water spigots and leaving them running. And he stated that he would not agree to that. Based upon the evidence presented to the Morris County Fiscal Court, Michael Scott Cronkite is hereby trespassed from all Morris County Park properties for a period of 3 years from today's date. A full list of properties is at the end of this correspondence. Michael Scott Cronkite is hereby advised that if he is located on any of the properties listed below during the 3-year period aforementioned, he is subject to immediate arrest and prosecution for criminal trespassing. Prior to being allowed back to the property after the 3-year period, Cronkite must request permission and agree to abide by all park policies and procedures. Reading, we need to have a motion if we're going to accept this as written by the fiscal court.
Motion to accept.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Without any other information, we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.